Welcome to the HBCU podcast. You're listening to episode 50. If you're an avid listener or just joining us for the first time, here we're joined by some awesome HBCU grads in the form of co-host and guest. We also focus on all the great things HBCU alumni are doing all over the world. On this episode, we speak with Regan Farley. She's a graduate of Lincoln University. Regan is a successful publicist and author. She's worked for companies such as Fox Broadcasting Company, NBCUniversal, Def Jam Records, CBS Television, PS Media Talent, and now the Regan Farley Agency. During this episode, we discuss her HBCU experience, her career as a publicist, and she drops some useful career gems for recent grads to utilize during this pandemic. Keep listening. It's the HBCU podcast.
So hey everyone, my name is Regan Farley. I am a proud graduate of the illustrious Lincoln University.
Welcome to the HBCU podcast. I'm so excited that you got a chance to, take some time out and speak with us today. You're the second Lincoln grad we've had on the podcast.
Don't. Who's the first?
Do you know Jameer Pond?
Of course I know Jameer, one of my good friends. Yes.
Yeah, so
Of course I do.
Jameer was our first Lincoln guest on here.
Dope.
Yeah. So I'm so glad to have yet another.
Yes.
So before we get into all of the conversation about how great you are, your HBCU experience, all of that, I would just be remiss not to talk about like the current state that we're in right now with COVID-19, the pandemic, and just how everybody is doing. So how are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you coping?
Now? Girl, because it's a lot right now. Like even the state of PR is shifting. So for those who don't know, I'm in public relations. So technically, I am helping create visibility for your favorite brands, businesses, and entrepreneurs. But long and the short, for me personally, for the Regan Farley Agency, I think we're at a time where we have to also go digital. So not only are we urging clients to be more visible in the social media space or in the digital publicity space, I also have to do that as a thought leader, right? Like, as a person who is trying to be on the cusp of putting out, fires in a sense when it comes to the media, but also gaining visibility in the media.
Yeah,
I have to do a lot more of interviews, a lot more speaking engagements, a lot more live segments. So, Natasha, I appreciate you for this opportunity as well.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I'm glad, you're staying busy and still, continuing to work. But of course, like we mentioned before, HBCU podcast, Lincoln University grad. So let's just start off talking about you and, where you're from and how exactly you ended up at Lincoln University.
Yeah. I am a Baltimore, Maryland native, Charm City. And when so many people hear that I'm from Baltimore, they always think, Oh, The Wire, and I don't know if you've ever seen The Wire, but when I went away to Lincoln, so many people were like, "Are you from where The Wire was filmed?" And I'm like, "No, I'm from the good part, okay? Like Jewish Baltimore, for real." But yeah, so I am from Baltimore, Pikesville, Maryland, to be specific, which is a suburb in Baltimore County. And my experience with going to Lincoln was different. So Lincoln wasn't my first choice, but looking back at it, I'm glad that it was the only choice that I made. One of my basketball teammates who I roomed with actually my freshman year, her and I, who I roomed with my freshman year in college, her and I, our senior year in college, did a series of college tours. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln was actually one of the stops on the college tour that we did. So we went to schools like Wilberforce, which I actually had a full ride to go to Wilberforce, but the campus was so small. Yeah. And I didn't want to be somewhere that small. Mm-hmm. So Lincoln it was.
Cool. Yeah, so when you had a chance to kind of like go around and do the college tour, I always encourage everybody who is looking to go to school. Of course, you want to do college visits, but especially with HBCUs, I think it's imperative to make sure you step foot on the campus and just really get that vibe, really get that feel. We do the best we can marketing it, but there's just something about, being on the grounds that'll really, change your mind.
Yes, for sure. And for me with Lincoln, so it was twofold, right? So, like I said, I grew up in Pikesville in a predominantly Jewish area. So we had something called, we had like a Black History Month campus, I guess you could say like campus college fair. So what was funny was that after my roommate and I, Nicole, after we visited Lincoln, which it was a great experience, although it was a small campus, we went around like autumn, so you could see like the campus just blooming, like it just being in rare form. It was pretty, it was intimate, not as intimate as Wilberforce, but it was intimate, and it just felt comfortable. It wasn't too far from home, so if I needed to get home, I could, but also if I needed to get back to Lincoln in an instance, I could. But flash back to the campus, the college fair that we had at Pikesville. Ironically, my campus admissions person came to the school. So when he came and I saw the table, the Lincoln University table, and I told him my name, he goes, "Oh, you're Regan Farley. I just admitted you to the school." And for him to remember me, for him to remember me out of all of those students, I couldn't believe it. And I was taken back by that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the other really great things too. I think I love about hearing people's HBCU stories because, on HBCU campuses or just small campuses in general, the admissions counselors, they do get some real face time with all the applicants. They're able to remember the names that come across their desk. So that's one of the things I really like too about HBCUs, how intimate, engaged, it can be. So that's dope.
Yeah, and to this day, he still, he follows me on Facebook. His name is Mr. Cole, and to this day, he's still a supporter of what I do and sharing my work and just being there for me. And of course, I'm not a student anymore, but he's just always had that sense of mentorship.
Yeah, that's dope. So with going to Lincoln and the college tours, how much exposure had you already had to historically Black colleges and universities? Like, did anyone in your family, any close friends, had they already had an HBCU experience, and then is that kind of what led you there, or were you just a complete novice, especially with your background and where you grew up?
Yeah. So mom didn't attend college, and she's an entrepreneur, but she always ingrained in me, I don't know what you're going to do after this, but you're going to college. Like that was a no-brainer right there.
Yeah.
And for her, she was very familiar with Lincoln University. So when I told her I had applied, she was like, "Okay, good, because I've been telling you to apply to Lincoln." Grandmom is an HBCU graduate. She went to Morgan State. So there was some familiarity there. But of course, it was always up to me to make that decision as to where.
It seems like Lincoln was a good choice for you when you got on campus. So this is, and you finally got there, you finally got in the dorm, all that kind of stuff. Did you already have in mind what you wanted to do as far as what your major was going to be?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do something as it related to media, because in high school I had a media relations, a multimedia class, and it was more so hands-on to the side of journalism. But girl, I knew that I didn't want to be on camera talent. Like, I knew I did not want to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to be behind the scenes doing something. And then gradually, as I got on campus and started to make my way, I knew that it would be PR.
Mm-hmm. Were you one of the people who on campus, because once that spark hits you, like, hey, I know I don't want to be on camera, do you all of a sudden realize, hey, let me manage your SGA campaign, or let me do the PR for your blah, blah, blah? Like, that's kind of how I got started doing stuff on campus.
Yeah. So for me, girl, once that bug hit me and I was like, okay, I know I don't want to be on camera talent, it was go time for me. So I actually ran for the vice president of external affairs. So for the 2011-2012 school year, I was vice president of external affairs. So anything outward facing that the campus did, like if it was homecoming, if it was spring fling, I got a chance to like rally a team, do the PR for it, set it all up, and kind of be that public relations facing person.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew. After that, I was like, oh, I'm doing this for life.
You're like, this is it.
Yeah, this is it.
Nice. So speaking of, careers and everything, you were led down a path to do what I'm assuming is like your dream job as being in, a publicist. But talk a little bit about just the companies you've worked with in the past and exactly what your gradual climb was to getting to where you are now, because I'm sure some internships were in there. I'm sure first job came about. They helped you get your sea legs. So what does that look like?
Bruises, all of that other stuff came about. But I live by the notion of minor setbacks make for a major comeback. So with me, so once I graduated from Lincoln, I didn't get my first job until about 6 months after. Mm-hmm. But I think there in that setback, or, when we come off of these college campuses, it's, oh, I've done this and I was at SUA and I managed the school newspaper and so on and so forth, and I'm going to get a job automatically. But when I say that wasn't the case, Regan had to be okay with the first time in her life, I won't say failing, but being delayed. So I didn't get a job until 6 months after, and that first job was working at the Maryland Transit Administration in publicity and marketing. Mm-hmm. So that was my first job, and a great first job. But actually, let me backtrack, because when I was vice president of external affairs, I got connected to the actual publicity. The director of publicity for the university, and I'm sitting in her office, I'm helping her put together a press release, and she goes, hey, do you want to go to California? And I'm looking at her kind of with the side eye, like, California, what do you mean? And she goes, call your mom. I got you an internship with Kevin Frazier, which at the time, Kevin Frazier was over at Entertainment Tonight. Mm-hmm. And he was a host there. Yeah. So she's like, your apartment is fully furnished. All you got to do is show up, call your mom right now, because you'll be there the entire summer. And when I say that was a blessing in disguise, one of the best opportunities of my lifetime. So from there, that kind of helped fuel that passion. And then backtrack to my first job, which was at the Maryland Transit Administration. It was a year contract position. And from there, after that contract was up, I moved to LA. So I interned in LA the summer of my senior year, went back home to work for a little bit, and then moved to LA to work for NBCUniversal. Nice. And that was an experience within itself. So I stayed in LA for 3 years, but within those 3 years, I always wanted to have my own company. Like, I knew that I didn't want to work for someone forever, but I knew that I had to take those skills that I had from the various companies and apply that to being a boss. So I believe that in order to be a boss, you have to be a worker first, and then you take those skills from the other places that you've been to, and then you apply them to your company. Yeah. So worked in LA for a little bit, lived there for 3 years, moved to New York, worked for Universal Music Group, moved back home to Baltimore to work for the NAACP. I was there for 3 years, worked in the communications department, and now I run my own firm full time.
Oh, nice. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What I'll say is, I know you were talking about being delayed when you first left college, but I mean, I know a lot of people will paint the picture that, they had jobs set up before they graduated, and that is the case for some people. But it's usually about 6 months or so before you can really land a job, even if you've been looking for those jobs during your senior year. Because mine was the same. A few of my other classmates were the same as well. Like sometimes they're not hiring at that time, but when that opens up, or the budget opens up, then they're hiring again. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty common, but I think what really speaks more to you as a person is what you do during that time, how you handle that time, how you decide to approach your next move during that off time or that delayed season. And it sounds like you already had in mind that like nothing's gonna stop me. I'm gonna continue to keep on pushing until I get to what I'm looking for. So with that being said, I did want to talk a little bit about your hustle, because you talked about being a boss, you talked about the jobs that you've had, you talked about just internship opportunities and how they've turned into something else. And now in your career as a business owner, you are an author as well. So talk a little bit to us about, your book, the title, and how like everything has rolled together to come, to this particular
point.
Yeah.
So I knew that I always wanted to add this component of my business to what I do. So I actually have a company called Hustle Sold Separately. And I know you've seen that quote, like the dream is free, but the hustle sold separately. So it's a play on that. It is to inspire, I won't even say just the next generation of entrepreneurs, but I'll say the next generation of doers. So even if you have a 9-to-5, that's still a hustle, because everyone doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. But if you are an entrepreneur, I do feel like we have to speak to you as well, because that's what I do. I think no matter what you do, though, it's important to write down your goals. It is important to plan, and it is important to be intentional. So that's what the mission of Hustle Sold Separately is. And within Hustle Sold Separately, I just released a journal line called Can't Knock the Hustle. I am a big Jay-Z fan, so it comes from his song Can't Knock the Hustle.
Oh, I love it. I'm a huge Jay-Z fan too.
I'm such a big Jay-Z fan. And it came from that more so, but I think it's important when, we're out here hustling and we're out here grinding, that we have to write our plans down. So my journal is to inspire you to be intentional, inspire you to manifest your dreams and manifest your goals.
Yeah, I love that. I think so many people, we're hearing more and more about it now. Like when I was in college or whatever, it was always goals, right? People have always talked about goals, but never to the magnitude of what it is today, with journals being available for you, with people having vision board parties and different stuff like that. Yeah. So I love that you have this a resource, because I'm realizing as time goes by, that is how you manifest things. You continuously write it down, you continue to see it, you know what I mean, pray on it, meditate on it, and continue to put it out there in the universe. So this seems like an awesome resource. In it, what could people look forward to? Like, what exactly have you seen from your experience? You wrote it down, you manifested it, and it came to fruition.
Yeah. One of my most recent bits of manifestation is my team and I. We had a project with the United Negro College Fund in LA. Unfortunately, we had to put a few things on pause with it, but they were hosting a gala for Anthony Anderson. And long and the short, we got that local contract. And then I just kept writing this down and being intentional and speaking it over us. But I'm like, we need a national contract now. And then lo and behold, one of my friends, so shout out to Mashari, we went to college together, but she texted me and she goes, "Hey, Regan, I saw that you were working locally with the United Negro College Fund. I'd love to talk to my boss about possibly having your team help us nationally." And that was just me being intentional, me praying over it, me consistently writing that down, because that's what I wanted for me and my team.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And with a lot of the things that you put out there, I think that's been a lot of people's experience too. You write it down, you continue to meditate on it, you see it come to fruition. What are some of the things that you see that are coming to fruition, but are also attributed to some of the skills and some of the connections that, you obtained while you were at Lincoln?
I will shout out Jameer for this one as well. So when I was at NAACP, the president at the time when Jameer helped me with this was Cornell Williams Brooks. And I had wanted to get Mr. Brooks on Hot 97. And I kept trying to think around about who could help me with that because I thought it would be a big placement for the company. Mm-hmm. And Jameer helped me with that. So like literally I just shot him a text. And that came from having that relationship with Lincoln. I was just like, hey, Jimmy, I need some help with this. Can you help me? And we got Mr. Brooks on Ebro in the morning. So things like that, you definitely don't know who you're sitting next to when it comes to college. So one, be nice to everyone. But then two, you never know who you can lean on. I think that's what HBCUs help you build. They help you build that network, that camaraderie, and just that space to get connected.
Yeah. Well, again, with where we are right now, just in our current state, we're seeing so many students who, won't possibly have a graduation, or they may not even have that graduation until December. A lot of things are going to be delayed for them. The usual path that most people would take, or most college seniors would take in this time right now, has just been totally shifted. And so if you could, just what kind of tidbits would you give them? Because like right now, we know they'll likely be, receiving degrees. But when it comes to moving towards that career path, or, that job that you're seeking, or what have you, what kind of advice could you give just right here in this COVID moment? Because we're all just really trying to figure out, hey, what are next steps? What will the next 6 months even look like when it comes to, job searching or what have you?
Yeah, I think that in losses, and not that this is a loss, but this is a different type of loss. In losses, there are lessons. So take the lesson from this and learn something from it, but then also stay consistent. Stay consistent in your outreach to people. Use this time to connect with someone that you might not necessarily know, be it someone on social media. Use this time to go on your LinkedIn, build out what that looks like. Tell folks that you are graduating and you're looking to start the next phase of your career. Ask if you can set up informationals with them, because right now, although this may seem hopeless, you haven't lost. You just learned a lesson from this. And that just means even if it's a lesson of consistency, mm-hmm. even if it's a lesson in networking, you learn something. You just have to pivot. Yeah. And pivot your thought process.
This is a defining time for really pretty much everybody who's going to be graduating. Companies are really almost looking to see if you can make the most out of this digital era. Like, they're so used to seeing people face to face. So if you can make an impression on them digitally and, virtually right now, you're probably going to be golden. So I think that's good feedback, good information. Yes. For sure.
No, that's right. Yeah, no, like definitely you'll be golden in this time. So if you know how to structure online events, if you know how to increase someone's digital engagement, if you're great at graphics, if you're good at making connections on social media, apply those skills, put those skills on your resume. There's a tool that I've been seeing float around the internet, and I don't know if it's called Hop On. And basically what Hop On does is it allows you to have virtual conferences. Mm-hmm. So if students can get in front of things like that and actually start to structure those things, I think that'll be great.
Yeah. You heard it here first. A tool that you can go ahead and learn and apply it some sort of way.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll definitely check that out myself. So also still just kind of talking career, because I feel like you've given and provided such good insight. When it comes to your particular profession, publicity, being a publicist, what do you feel like some of the biggest misconceptions about what you do?
Yeah, I think one big misconception, and I tell this to clients all the time, and I even break it down to students, is that PR and marketing is the same thing. Publicity creates visibility. Marketing will sell tickets. So I think as a publicist, I'm not in the business of selling something for you as a potential client. Mm-hmm. I'm in the business of getting that optimal visibility for your brand, your message, your so on and so forth. Yeah. But marketing, one hand washes the other. So how can I help you come up with getting that product seen as opposed to it being sold, if that makes sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some of the things that you're seeing that has been working that you feel like is really making a splash as we, of course, again, navigate through this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I'm going to say digital events. Like, I am going to say that right now is the time where organizations, companies, businesses, even student groups have to get crafty with how we gather, how we meet up. So what does that look like? One of the places I hang out when I'm in Atlanta too is the Gathering Spot. Yeah. And you see that they're even doing it. They're doing a lot of more online content and a lot of like virtual meetings and just different things like that to still get people engaged. And even with that app that I mentioned, Hop On, it has a lot of really nice functions. So like there was a networking component where if you and I are attending the event, we get 3 minutes to network, and it kind of looks like a FaceTime opportunity. So like we could FaceTime technically if we are event attendees. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we can connect with each other should we choose to. Then there was a component where you could see a DJ and you could shop online. Oh, nice. So I think, yeah, it was very faceted, and I think that will be the wave until we can meet up in person again. Things like that will definitely be the wave.
So again, if you are not maximizing just being digital in general, like these are really great ways to start to do that and start to connect, especially professionally. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So you did talk a little bit about internships. Of course, we've talked about your career and just how you're changing the game. But I definitely want to speak to you about some of your favorite memories, because I feel like I heard you in conversation say that you played basketball. So were you a student athlete while you were at Lincoln?
I was not a student athlete at Lincoln, but I did play basketball in high school. So, okay. In high school, I played ball. I didn't play in college, but some other things that I did in college. So I was the vice president of NCNW, which is an amazing organization. I also was senator for my class. Vice president of student government. I managed the school newspaper. Trying to think what I didn't do. Like, there's so much.
That sounds like the background of a publicist, like was, mixed up in everything.
Mixy, yes, exactly.
Nothing wrong with that. So when it comes to HBCU memories, what are some of your favorite memories from undergraduate life, whether that be, homecoming, tailgating, or road trips, what have you? What really comes to mind when it comes to...
One of them, I am going to say NASAP, and I saw that they are not even having that this year, unfortunately. Oh, no. Yeah, but so that's the national, I might be saying it wrong. I think that stands for the National Association of Student Affairs Professionals. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong, but long and the short, when you are a student representative, be it Campus Queen, be it SGA or Royal Court, you go to this really big conference. I know out of all 105 HBCUs, when I went, maybe it was about 60 or 70, but I got to meet some people who are still my friends to this day at other HBCUs. Like, I remember Lincoln's SGA, our cabinet at the time, we would go to like University of Maryland Eastern Shore often. We would go to Atlanta often. We just kind of had relationships everywhere from NASAP. And within those relationships, we were able to form bonds. And like, we attended UMES's homecoming often. Like, we attended their spring fling for free. And we just got to build a camaraderie with like other people.
Yeah.
And then an on-campus story. Maybe this was 2010, right? But it was like the biggest blizzard that I had ever seen. Maybe it was the Great Blizzard of 2010. I don't know.
I know nothing about it. Like, I'm a true Southerner, so I don't do snow.
Got you. But girl, at Lincoln, when I say, and let me paint a picture for you about Lincoln if you've never been, it's Amish country. Like, a ton of Black people and horse and buggies. And that's Lincoln. But long story short, there was this great blizzard either my freshman or my sophomore year. I think it was my sophomore year. When I say we couldn't get outside, we couldn't get back home, but Lincoln was turned up, like parties. We have this area called the tunnel where it's just like a long tunnel in between like some dorm rooms, but like people in this blizzard, people were outside with music, throwing snowballs, drinking hot chocolate. Like, it was a whole vibe in the snow.
Nice.
And it shouldn't have been. Like, it just shouldn't have been, but it was a great memory.
It's like, make the most of it. It sounds like if you can't get home and this is where you have to be, you may as well make the most of it.
Exactly.
I love it. That's a really cool memory. And anytime I hear people talk about snow in general, I'm just always intrigued because, like I said, I mean, I've had the pleasure of being in cities where it was snowing, but I could leave, and I just could not imagine staying somewhere all, year round where it snows. Like, I'm a hot weather person for sure.
And it was bad. Like, lights went off on campus.
Oh no.
It was bad, but people were turned up. Like, it was bad.
When it comes to giving back, and when it comes to giving back specifically to your HBCU, what does that look like for you?
To me, that looks like helping sharp the minds of students who want to walk the same path as me. So if it is a communication student that wants to reach out, I'd never have a problem. Like, if I got to dedicate 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour to pouring into that person because they walked in my shoes at Lincoln, I have to do that. Like, there's no question, no matter how busy I am. I have to share their messages. And even if it's just not my HBCU specifically, but I feel a sense of urgency to reach out to that next generation. So like, Watch the Yard is having something this weekend. It's on Sunday. They're having something called YardCon, and it's for HBCU and PWI students. But one of the things that Jonathan, the founder, asked me was like, can I put something together to teach students who want to do publicity? So I put together something called the PR Playbook. And honestly, did I really have the time to sit there and do this? No, but I felt obligated to. So it's about 30 pages. It is the how to do PR from a student perspective, but then also what you need to work in this industry. Mm-hmm. So it's twofold. So like, there's some press release templates that I created. There are some email pitches. There are some how do you write a press release, what resources should you use, how should you find job opportunities. And although that took some time for me to create, I felt like I needed to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good resource. I think, especially with the way media has changed, especially since when I graduated or when I was matriculated in HBCU, it's changed, greatly. So I think any tool like that is really helpful. And that's awesome that you're giving that back, not just to your university, but to any HBCU student who wants to be in PR. That's dope.
Yeah, I feel like I have to do that. And even if it's, hey, can you speak to my school? I feel like those are things that I have to do because a few someones did that for me. Like I said, Ashley sent me to live in California for the summertime with my apartment fully furnished. Like, so if I can ever pay it forward in that way, those are the things that I want to do for someone else.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people, we speak about giving back to your HBCUs, and of course it looks like whatever you want it to look like for you, but we know that with our historically Black colleges and universities, all of them could always use our monetary donations. So as a Lincoln University graduate, like what are you telling your alumni to make sure not only are they giving their time and talent, but they're also sharing their treasures with the university?
Yes, for sure. And I'll be transparent to say I need to do that a lot more. I need to harp up on that a lot more. Because I do, but it's sometimes only on certain days. Like if they're trying to raise money and they need me to go, sure, I'll give something.
Yeah.
But you're right. We also got to put our money where our mouth is too.
Awesome. Now, if you could encourage a student to choose your HBCU in particular, well, it doesn't have to be Lincoln, but I would say that you are a little biased towards Lincoln.
Very biased.
But if you could encourage anyone to go to an HBCU, what would you say?
I would say that an HBCU changed my life, and it changed my life in more ways than one. It allowed me to think deeply, critically, but it also allowed me to meet my friends for a lifetime. It allowed me to know that I am worthy. It allowed me to know that nothing is impossible. And it made me the person that I am today. So go to an HBCU, kids.
Nice. Now, Regan, what do you have coming up? What's coming up for you? I know you're still very busy, even with us kind of being on lockdown in this pandemic. Tell us what you have coming up for you, and then also where listeners can find out more information about you.
Yeah, so coming up for me, I do have a series called So You Want to Be a Publicist, which is for current and aspiring publicists to build their brands. But then also, I use a resource. So if you are a publicist or even a service-based business owner in general, I use a resource called HoneyBook. I have a HoneyBook class on Monday, and it's called Managing Client Relationships with HoneyBook. And the theme is just like pay to play, because that service allows me to do my invoicing for clients. It allows me to have a client portal, but then the good part about it is you're paid off for referrals through the platform as well. So it's a great way to make money, like some extra cash, and we all love extra cash. So yeah, that class is on Monday. Then I have So You Want to Be a Publicist, which right now I'm selling the ebook and the masterclass bundle. And what else do I have coming up? I'm speaking at YardCon on Sunday, so that's at 2 p.m. Girl, it's a lot. I done just got confused because it's a lot, even in Corona. We'll leave it there for now. And then my book, Can't Knock the Hustle. So make sure you check that out on Amazon.
Nice. And if anyone wanted to follow you in your agency, like what's your website? What's your social?
Yes. My website is reganfarley.com. So Regan is spelled Regan. Farley is Farley. My Instagram handle is RAETHE, Publicist, PUBLICIST. That is my personal Instagram. And then my agency Instagram is Regan Farley Agency. So REGAN FARLEY AGENCY.
Nice. And if you guys missed anything, don't worry. You'll be able to find all of the links, all of the social media channels that Regan shared in our episode description, as well as at the HBCU podcast.com. So Regan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, very busy schedule. I can't say that enough, to just, chat with me a little bit and share all of the gems that you did.
Thank you. No, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, because usually I'm behind the scenes. So I appreciate you even thinking of me to just say, hey, let me interview you.
You know what? I'm so glad again that you said yes to that, because I know that you're a behind the scenes person, and I believe me, a lot of times I tap people behind the scenes. They're like, nah, no, that's not where, so I'm glad you could pop out from behind the curtain again to share some gems with us and talk about your love for Lincoln. So thank you for doing it.
Yes, thank you so much, Natasha. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the HBCU podcast. We have so much more HBCU content on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, and visit us at thehbcupodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at thehbcupodcast. Like us on Facebook. We love you for listening. Until next time.